This is Lyqa Maravilla, a registered psychometrician, a trying hard educator, motivational speaker, and author. And it's time for us to share stories, insights, and lessons as we keep trying hard to be better together. You're nothing but a second-rate, trying hard copycat. Familiar ba yung line na yun sa inyo? It's from a movie called Bituing Walang Ningning, which was first released in 1985, years before I was born. It was written by Emmanuel Borlaza, and it stars characters Lavinia and Dorina. Lavinia was actually the one who said the line, and Dorina, played by Sharon Cuneta, was the one that Lavinia was speaking to. Lavinia, by the way, is played by the great Sherry Hill, one of the best villains when it comes to local films. And this line is something na if ikaw ay 90s baby, imposible na hindi mo memorize. Kasi lagi siyang pinapalabas in free TV. This movie is deeply ingrained in my consciousness. But if you're a little bit younger, you probably know it from the TV remake starring Sarah Geronimo. Now, whether you are remembering this line from the old movie or from the remake, relatively new remake, this is a topic that I feel we need to talk about. Kasi minention nila yung trying hard eh. So how can you be a person who tries hard without being a copycat? This episode is dedicated to all the Dorinas in the world. Dear Dorina, now, again, we're going to talk about what it means to be a try-hard or paano tayo magiging trying hard without being a copycat. So, I am making this a two-part series because I started out thinking that I'm just going to give a quick talk about this topic. Pero the more na I started unpacking things, the more I realized that I need to approach this from two perspectives. From yung perspective of someone who is being inspired by someone else's work, and what we're going to talk about next time. So again, don't forget to follow this podcast if you haven't yet, kasi we're going to talk about the perspective naman of Lavinia, who is the person naman na sabihin na natin ninanakawan ng credit or na ginagaya ng iba. Pero today, it's all about Dorina. Now, Dorina, again, the character played by Sharon Cuneta in that movie, is someone who was accused of being a copycat because she is turning out to be a good singer, a great singer at that, and napipit siya against Lavinia, who was the reigning singing superstar of that time. Now, this entire podcast is dedicated to anyone who tries hard and is trying naman not to copy people. There's a fine line kasi sa minds ng people when it comes to plagiarism and getting inspired by something. When is it straight up imitation and when is it drawing inspiration? When do you claim unjust ownership and when do you start making it your own? So I will try to give all of the trying hard Dorinas out there who are trying to make it out in the world a bit of advice so that you can protect yourself and you can maintain your integrity then as you set out to be like the people that you look up to. Okay? So this is entirely from my perspective. Ito sa experience ko as someone was nanakawan na ng content at sa totoo lang nanakawan pa rin ng content hanggang ngayon. And someone then who is inspired by so many other people, great people who came before me. I like the idiomatic expression na I'm just a fly standing on top of a carabao's back, or that I'm standing on the shoulders of giants, because sa totoo lang, everything I do is inspired then by people I've met in life. People I've met personally and people I've encountered through books, movies, documentaries, and things that I consumed. So, how do we strike the balance? How do we find our own path when, in fact, a lot of people have gone before us? Now, let me introduce this concept sa inyo. There is this story, and it's not just a story actually, it's a historical fact, it's an event. If you know Helen Keller, she is a hero to a lot of people. And being born with so many challenges, nahanap niya rin yung way niya in the world. And she was friends with Mark Twain. Now, Mark Twain may be someone that you are more familiar with kasi required reading sa school yung books niya or yung work niya. Pero ang nangyari was, Helen Keller was accused of plagiarism at one point in her life. And Mark Twain, being a good friend to Helen Keller, wrote her a letter. Let me read a part of that letter to you. Sabi niya, and again, this is Mark Twain writing, "Oh, dear me, how unspeakably funny and owlishly idiotic and grotesque was that plagiarism farce. As if there was much of anything in any human utterance, oral or written, except plagiarism. The kernel, the soul, lets us go further and say the substance, the bulk, the actual and valuable material of all human utterances is plagiarism. For substantially all ideas are second-hand, consciously and unconsciously drawn from a million outside sources and daily used by the garnerer with the pride and satisfaction born of the superstition that he originated them. Whereas there is not a rag of originality about them anywhere except the little discoloration they get from his mental and moral caliber and his temperament, and which is revealed in characteristics of phrasing. When a great orator makes a great speech, you are listening to 10 centuries and 10,000 men, but we call it his speech, and really some exceedingly small portion of it is his." Now, it can be about full, no, yung sinabi ko sa inyo, pero let me just emphasize the line there that I love. Sabi niya, all ideas are second-hand, consciously and unconsciously drawn from a million outside sources. Now, there is something that I tell my students all the time, and this was before I encountered this quote or this letter from Mark Twain, and I want to share that to you. I say this all the time, we all drink from the same stream. Now, what do I mean by that? If the stream is the general collective human consciousness, the thought, our creativity, the ideas of the entire human race, we all drink from that same stream. So, ibig sabihin nun, we can be inspired by the same exact thing or combination of things as someone else. And because we all drink from the same stream, there is a very likely na possibility that the end product can be alike. Magkapareho. Bakit? Kasi pareho tayo ng human experience. Pareho tayo ng human thoughts. Pareho tayo ng human predilections, inclinations, diba? Tendencies. It may not be exactly the same, but they can be similar. And because we come from similar backgrounds and experiences and thoughts, there is a possibility that we make something that we feel is entirely original. Kahawig na siya ng something na ginawa na ng person who came before you, whether in the recent history or sa again, tens of years, thousands of years before you. And by possibility then that someone who will come after you will also have the same thought. So ibig sabihin, is there anything really unique? Now, I will try to strike a balance. Again, we are going to attack this notion of being a trying hard copycat from opposite points of view. Ikaw na gumagaya, ikaw na ginagaya, how do we balance it? But I want to start off from this point. We all drink from the same stream. If you think about it, there is nothing purely original because we all stand on the shoulders of giants. We all are built to a certain level because of the society that we are living in right now, because of the state of the world right now. So when we learn things from other people, whether through experience, reading, teaching, as in them directly teaching us, they become part of who we are. We are an amalgamation of everything we encountered in life. So is there anything truly original? Now, even if we all drink from the same stream, there are things that we need to consider. And yun yung ifo-focus natin in this episode. So again, I want to talk to Dorina and give her 3 pieces of advice. But the first one would be that. And I want to start off this 2-part series with that idea that we all drink from the same stream. But now that we have talked about yung now, yung sitwasyon, the next question would be now what? This is kind of a thing for me. So I will always go through that flow. So now this is the statement. Now what? What do we do about it? So for the Dorinas in the world, I have 3 pieces of advice. Okay? If you want to be spared of the notion na nagnanakaw ka ng ideas from other people, if ayaw mong mag-plagiarize ng work, you want to maintain your integrity, how do you do that? Knowing that, again, there is nothing purely original in the world. How do we protect ourselves? How do we respect other people? How do we do that? So, pag-uusapan natin yan today. Okay? Out of the way, let's talk about my 3 tips para sa mga Dorina na trying hard pero ayaw maging copycat. Okay? Now, the first thing that I want to emphasize is this. You really have to be honest with yourself. Okay? And I know this is something na parang, okay, automatic na yan dapat. Pero a lot of people struggle with this. Like, they can't face yung reality ng decisions nila at some point. So, wala silang ownership sa decisions nila. A lot of adults still point to other people para may sisisihin sila for decisions that they made. And ayaw nating maging ganun. As people who are trying hard to make it on our own terms and na gagawin natin ito without hurting other people, we have to do better. We have to be better. So what does that mean? You have to take a deep dive into your own soul. Okay? You have to know what you stand for, what your values are. Like, masakit yung tanong na yun, pero kailangan natin talagang maging honest with ourselves. Would you trade your integrity for success, for money, for what? Meron tayong kailangan na i-confront doon. Because there are people in the past, and we've seen this happen throughout history, who would claim another person's work as their own and then lie about it and then take that secret to their graves. Ibig sabihin, hindi nila aaminin na ninakaw nila yung work kahit alam na ng buong mundo, kahit mapatunayan after their death. Bakit? Kasi hindi sila willing to face themselves. Okay? To see themselves in the mirror and admit na ninakaw nila yon. So really, the first question here, Dorina, would be, ano ang nagmamatter sa'yo? Would you sell your soul for success? Can you live with yourself knowing that you stole someone else's work? Kasi there are people in the world who could do that. And I will not name names or say exact situations. No, this podcast is not about that. But the reality is, people can live with themselves knowing that they did that. But are you one of those people? Because we have to establish these boundaries habang simple pa ang buhay for us. Habang we can still afford to say no. Habang we can still build guardrails for our own lives and our own decisions. Para meron tayong enough na protection din for further consequences ng actions natin. So again, you have to be honest with yourself. And what that means would be, if I know that etong quote na ito ay gawa ng ibang tao, hindi ako kukuha ng kahit anong credit for someone else's work. Which leads us to tip number 2. Again, after being honest with yourself, the second tip would be for you to give credit where credit is due. Whether mahuhuli ka nila o hindi, whether it's in public or in private, you really have to credit the people who own the work that you put up. And this can be hard, sa totoo lang. This can be hard kasi some people need to unlearn decades of getting away with it para magawa nila ito uli. Now, let me share an anecdote. And this is something that irks me to no end. No, there was this one situation wherein someone who holds a high position within the church posted a devotional. So, devotional daw ito. And daily siya nagpo-post ng mga devotionals niya. Tapos, I was reading them and may something very familiar sa akin doon sa tone nung pagkakasulat nung devotional na yon. Tapos, so may iba na yung pakiramdam ko kasi I know the person and I kind of know na parang, okay, hindi niya voice to. This is not how he usually speaks. Tapos, dahil maganda yung content nung kanyang mga Facebook posts, nung mga devotionals na ito, ang daming people na nagko-comment sa kanya. So, they would say, wow, Pastor, ang ganda naman ng sinabi mo, ang ganda naman ng devo na yan, ang ganda ng sulat mo, ang galing mo naman magsulat. And he would actually respond to these people saying na, oh, thank you, glory to God, oh, thank you, by God's grace lang ito. Kaya, thank you so much for reading my posts. May something may something off dito. So, me being medyo curious little cat that I am, I Googled the article. So, I Googled the article that he posted. And again, ito ay walang kahit anong credits at all, no? I Googled it, and all of the posts that he made actually came from a devotional that someone else wrote. It was parts of a book. And chinap-chap niya, so per day, tapos tinatype niya lang sa Facebook. Ipopost niya without crediting the actual author of the book. And then people were commending him, and he was accepting praise for something that he didn't write. And it really, may something talaga nag-click sa akin, parang this is so wrong. Now, bakit? Kasi the time na you put up someone else's work and you don't give them the credit, and nag-cross pa siya ng isang line, which is tumatanggap siya ng acknowledgement, ng praise from other people as if siya yung gumawa nung actual post. This is direct plagiarism. This is stealing. And I couldn't contain myself. No, hindi ko talaga kaya. So I actually spoke to him in private. I messaged him in private, and I told him that I think you should add yung links from where you got these posts. Add yung name ng author. Kasi I think people think that you wrote them. Now, did he take it down? Did he apologize? Did he include the author's name? We won't go into detail na. Pero that encounter really, parang it changed my perspective on certain things. What do we need to take away from that? We have to understand that a person in position or a person that we hold to a high regard can still make these mistakes, whether they mean to do it or not. Hindi ko naman na pwedeng i-push na or i-prove, but he crossed a certain line because he was taking credit for a work that he didn't do. So as a Dorina who is trying to do it right, just give credit where credit is due. Okay? So it's hindi mo kabawasan kung hindi ikaw ang nagsabi ng entire thing. Hindi kabawasan that you are reading someone else's work and that you're getting inspired by someone else's work. Just put the name in there. Put their social media handles in there. Quote na lang, di ba? May something very sinister about someone who copies a quote and then posts it sa kanyang sariling timeline when they could just hit share and share that post para kahit papaano yung name pa rin ng person yung nandoon dun sa original post. There's an extra na step when people download a photo and then re-upload it on their own timelines or pages instead of sharing the actual post where the artist put up yung photo na yon. Like, why would you do that when sharing content is so convenient? Diba? May something very sinister about it. So again, the Rinas out there, just give credit where credit is due. Share when there's a share button. If there's no share button, just tag the person na pinanggalingan nun. Lagay nyo kahit name na lang nila in quotes. Hindi naman kailangan na full APA or MLA na citation kung Facebook post lang siya. Pero yun na yung bare minimum that you could do. Right? Now, if you're writing an academic paper or research paper, your thesis, of course, alam nyo na yan, required ang citations. Okay? So again, give credit where credit is due. Now, next piece of advice would be this. You have to make it your own. Okay? Now, let me go back to the idea of what you could copyright or what you could protect as an intellectual property, what you could own as yours. The idea goes like this. You cannot copyright ideas, okay? But you could copyright works. Ibig sabihin nun, if it's an idea that's in your head, and hindi mo siya skinetch, hindi mo siya sinulat, hindi mo siya ginawang presentation, wala kang output, you don't have any right over that idea that is just in your head. So if you really want to own something, if you really want to innovate, if you really want to turn that inspiration into action, do something about it. Turn it into art. Okay? Hindi pwedeng puro inspiration lang. Naglagay mo ng action. Okay? So, don't just cut up pieces from other people's work. Okay? Tapos kukunin mo lang, ipopost mo lang. No, do something with it. Don't just plaster your name on top of something that other people worked hard for. You have to do your own work. Okay? This is how you make it your own. Okay? So, again, the entire stream is there. We drink from the same stream. Pero what we do with what we drink from that stream is ours. That is how original you could be. Kasi, again, even when we're exposed to the exact same conditions, yung interpretation mo naman can be different. The way that you say something may be different. It may be something that also echoes sa ibang tao. A lot of the things that I say, and I will open myself up to vulnerability in this when I say this. A lot of the things I say are things that other people have said naman din in the past. It may not be verbatim, no? Hindi siya word per word na pareho. Pero if you adhere to the same set of values, if you believe in hard work, if you believe that everything is a learning experience, then you probably would say something na pareho ng mga quotes ko in concept. Pareho sila ng idea. But because I am who I am and because I am a mixture of every influence na pile on top of me, iba pa rin yung pag-regurgitate ko ng information. Iba pa rin yung pagkakapresent ko ng information. And the way that I present it may echo din sa ibang tao. They may react positively din dun sa sinabi ko, sa pagkakasabi ko. Kahit na yung sinabi ko ay kung tutuusin, nasabi na rin ng iba in another way. So again, you have to make it your own. You have to do the work. This is how you find your voice. Don't just Control-C, tas Control-V everything. Okay? Don't just copy and paste. You have to digest it. You have to make it your own. You have to put in the hours, okay? The laborious na work of digesting information, getting inspired, and doing something with it. Okay? So again, put in the work. Now, the last piece of advice is something that would also lead into our next episode kasi next time we're going to talk about, I'm going to address the Lavinias in the world naman, yung mga nakokopya or nanakawan ng work, no? Pero this is something that I want to tell the Dorinas as well. So those who are being inspired when it comes to other people's work. Here's the last piece of advice. You have to know that nothing is entirely yours too. In the same way that you've been inspired by the work of other people and you turned it into something else and you made it your own, there is a very high possibility that when you put your work out there, people will also get inspired. Okay? And people will also get inspired. They will also make your work their own. And ganun lang talaga. Okay? So when we make it, part of the process and yung pagiging full circle ng buong bagay na ito is that I was inspired by someone else, I made it my own, and now I get to inspire other people who will then make it their own. Okay? Nagfu-full circle siya when someone who was inspired is now inspiring someone else. So, I don't want you to come out of this episode thinking na, okay, so I'm free na pala to steal from other people or to grab inspiration from everything. It's really not the purpose of this episode. The purpose of this episode is to know the reality of the situation, to address bad behavior, and to open ourselves to the possibility that we can come from both ends. We can come from the perspective of someone who is inspired by other people's work and who is wrongly or wrongfully accused of stealing the credit. But hindi ka forever na Dorina eh. Magiging Lavinia ka rin in the future. Your work will inspire other people. How do we react to that? You have to remember that again, nothing is entirely yours too. Now again, we'll talk about that next week. Now again, balikan lang natin to those of you who are trying hard but don't want to be copycats sa mga Dorina ng mundo na gustong sumubok at gustong mag-innovate, gustong gamitin ang inspiration na to make something of themselves. Remember that we all drink from the same stream. You have to give credit where credit is due. It's as easy as asking for permission whenever you use someone else's work, quoting them, sharing the post instead of copying it, pasting it, and making it like it's your own. Then, after you've been inspired, again, if you've been inspired by anyone else's work, you have to make it your own, do your work, find your voice, okay? And next, last tip, you have to know that nothing is entirely yours too. You will have to throw the rope back. People will then get inspired by your work too. So, in the same way that we recognize that people put in the work sa ating buhay so we can be who we are and produce the work that we do, we have to also be open to the possibility that by putting our work out there, we are also investing in other people and that they can then use our work as the springboard, sabihin na natin, for their own thing, for their own path, for their own success. Okay? Now, yan muna for now. And hopefully when you hear the line that you're nothing but a second-rate trying hard copycat, it doesn't hurt or sting the same way that it does before. Okay? Now, thank you for listening. And if you don't follow the podcast yet, again, hit follow so you can catch the next episode. Next episode, we're going to talk about the Lavinia. So, Dear Lavinia naman tayo. Paano kung ikaw ang kinokopya? And if you want to post about this podcast, share anything about this podcast, or ask me things that you want me to talk about in this podcast, you can reach out to me directly through my Facebook page. It's Lyqa Maravilla on Facebook, Lyqa Maravilla. So, remember, it's just Lyqa. Medyo unique naman yung name ko. And I will talk to you guys soon. Thank you for your time. And as we say in this podcast, when it comes to trying hard, it's all about dreaming big, working hard, and hopefully not caring too much about what other people think.